I'd like to call the March 23rd, 2023 Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee meeting to order. Please remember that members of the committee can provide a second to a motion. Only members of the committee can provide a second to a motion unless it's me.
Well played.
Live stream of the public meeting is available to the public on YouTube and a ABOR Live link. Today, our agenda, the universities and committee will discuss ABOR's admission standards and possible revisions to its admission policy. Next, the committee will be asked to review U Arizona's request to offer a novel master's program in business analytics at its Chandler location. ASU has objected to U Arizona's request, and the committee will hear from both universities. U Arizona will then provide the committee with an update on its strategic vision and plan for the University of Arizona College of Applied Science and Technology at the Sierra Vista campus. For item 5, the committee will be asked to recommend for board approval proposed new ABOR committee charters. Next, the board office asks the committee to recommend that the board grants authority to the board office to revise existing board policies to align with these new committee names and structure. But our first order of business is to approve the consent agenda. Before we take action on the consent agenda, I'd like to note that item 10, request for new academic organizational unit for the University of Arizona, has been pulled from the consent agenda. It has been placed on our regular agenda. So I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval items 7 through 9 on the remaining consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we need to approve the committee minutes, meeting minutes from January 26, 2023. Are there any questions, comments, or edits? Hearing none, I move the committee approve the minutes from the January 26, 2023 Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Motion carries. All right, we are on to discussion of admission standards. The various changes over the past 30 years in our system as to how we educate our students necessitates a timely discussion around the board's current enrollment policy. There are a number of exceptions to the board's current assured admission requirements, and there is a need to revisit the board admission strategy and policies. Andrew Comrie is here to lead our discussion. We are anxious to hear it. So we'll start with a framework. Jane Kuhn from the board office is also here, as well as, of course, the vice presidents to address each of their campuses. So Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, Chair Duvall. Good morning, everybody. I've just got a few slides to help remind us what it is we're talking about and to kind of seed the discussion. Mostly just to review what the current standards are and what we think some of the potential options might be. After that, we'll have essentially a Q&A as Chair Duvall just outlined. So quick reminder on our current admission policy. So background, the current policy was really designed to appear and to be simple for students and families, and of course also high school guidance counselors. The idea being if you get an A or a B, you get into school. And while the reality is it's a little more complicated than that, as you'll see, especially because since these policies were created many, many decades ago, universities and higher education in general has got a whole lot more complicated, and the policies reflect that. So a quick reminder, core policy here, we have what's called assured admission. And you can see there that there are 16 core course requirements, a range of stuff that I won't go into now, for which you need to get a 3.0 or better GPA on a 4.0 scale in high school. Then there's something called delegated admissions, which is that the universities have discretion to go down to a 2.5 GPA. On their own to help shape the class that they're admitting. And then in addition to that, in fact, there's a further 10% limit for special cases as deemed by the university admissions. So that's sort of the core policy, but it turns out that there's a whole lot more to it. First of all, we have to worry about transfers, and obviously that's a big part of what we'd like to promote. And there are matching rules for transfers that I won't go into here, other than those GPAs are community college GPAs, not high school GPAs in that particular table. Then we have some exceptions. You'll recall last year we discussed and the board approved the NAU's pilot program, whereby the 16 units is reduced to 14 with adaptations of what the math requirement and the second language requirement are. Other than that, it's much the same, still a 3.0 or better, and still delegated underneath that. Then this discussion was prompted in part by the fact that come July, it's likely that UAGC will be incorporated into the U of A, and it has different admissions standards to the current ABOR policy. And those are at this level just a high school diploma or GED or a state certificate. We're not talking about UAGC specifically today, but it's sort of what prompted this broader discussion, which is it time to sort of see what the whole set of requirements are, and do they need to be simplified or changed or delegated and so forth. There are other exceptions. There's another one in our policy, which is if you are age 22 or older, then the university may adopt alternative admission requirements. This is widely used in online programs because many online students are over 22. Then there are others. There are rules for homeschooled applicants, for non-residents, that's delegated to the universities. And then the other rules, again, still for veterans, special programs at community colleges, and so forth. So many details in the policy. It runs multiple pages in the policy manual. So what are our options? And this is the last slide and really just frames what it is hopefully we'll be talking about today. One is do nothing. Right? There's nothing's inherently broken. It's happening as it is. It's just complicated and perhaps not as simple as originally intended. So we could maintain the current policy and or tidy it up in some fashion. Or the other alternative is we could actually have policy be relatively lean and delegate most things to the universities. Each of those would be with board approval, so much as we do many other things, right? So the universities would each have their own admissions policies that would come before the board and be plainly advertised, but essentially the details would all be at the university level. And then there's a whole bunch of possibilities in between, and none of these are mutually exclusive. They're just a set of ideas that, frankly, staff just brainstormed on. And you'll see there, I won't read them all, but various permutations of whether we were about online, non-residents, main campus only, branch campuses, do everything, do nothing, and so forth. So there's a range of possibilities there that are worth exploring. There are pros and cons to all of these. There isn't one magic answer. And so for this discussion, we thought it'd be appropriate if the provost and any enrollment leads in the room would like to sort of join in the conversation. I guess we probably have to squeeze people. You got mics there? Excellent. Then the enrollment leads are sitting right over there because they live and die by these rules and trying to shape a class for each university. And I'm going to hand it back to you, Regents, to initiate the discussion.
Terrific. I guess I'd like to begin by asking the campus representatives to address this from each of your campus perspectives on both how you are currently operating relative to exceptions, whether or not you anticipate additional exceptions coming our way, sort of what this looks like on the ground, and obviously if you want to turn to your admissions teams, please do so. Provost Gonzalez, start with you.
So I'll just start off by saying that we at ASU, we strongly support maintaining the current admissions policy as applied to ASU. We think it's very important that our students understand that we apply the same standard to all undergraduate academic programs, regardless of delivery mode. So whether it be in person, online, hybrid, it's the same set of standards, the same course. It's only the modality that differs. However, we do understand the need for flexibility, and I think that's where we'd like to sort of focus the discussion on how to allow flexibility. Currently, we do apply the delegated admission standards, keeping it under the 10% requirements, and that's done by our enrollment team, who looks carefully at reasons for that, because we do understand there are certainly many reasons why students come in with different qualifications that we need to be sensitive to. We also, as you know, in our online, we have what we call earned admission. So there are students who may not qualify for admissions currently to our online programs, but we allow them through our learning enterprise to take courses at a reduced kind of trial basis. And then if they succeed and earn at least a C or better, can convert those to credit. And when they collect enough credits, they can then earn their admission into ASU. So that's another way that we're currently dealing with it in the online domain.
Sure. Thank you. Provost Pugliese. On to you.
Thank you, Regent Duvall. I would just like to thank the board for your prior approval of the pilot that we're implementing this coming year. And that you might remember that the rationale for that pilot was rooted in NAU's interest in broadening participation in higher education and communicating transparently to high school students about what indeed is required for admission to Northern Arizona University. And for us, that meant aligning the high school core requirements for graduation with the core course requirements. And so we appreciate, too, the flexibility that you've afforded us, the flexibility that's inherent in the current policy, and the further flexibility you afforded us to be transparent about how we used our delegation in the admissions policy. However, given the recent, consideration given to how our missions as three universities are differentiated, we see value in considering option one, that is delegation of admission requirements to the three universities, and that would allow us to even be more clear about what's required to attend NAU and allow us to pursue our agenda to open opportunities and give students access to outstanding programs. I'd like to ask our Vice President for Enrollment Management, Annika Olson, to speak in more detail about what we're doing and where we see ourselves going.
I would love to. Oh, it's already on. Thank you, Karen. And thank you, Regents, for allowing us to have this conversation. To Andrew's point, it was meant to be a clear, transparent policy for students. It is not any of those things today. Beyond the exception, but the delegated admissions, students and families don't what is delegated admissions? We certainly explain it, but at its surface, it's not terribly clear. In addition, beyond delegated, there's the 10% rule. And when you look at some of the clearinghouse data, when we deny students, when we formally denied students and look to where they end up, many of them end up at 4 years in Arizona, both at U of A, ASU, and some other campuses. So considering that, we all are operating to meet our mission. Ours is access, and we are excited about that mission, and we want to be as transparent as possible with our students. And so certainly aligning with the high school graduation requirements we've gotten tremendous amount of positive feedback from high school counselors, families, and students like, oh, I get it. I'm graduating. I should apply. I'm doing well. Yes, please apply. And so I think the delegated option allows campuses that want to stay with the 16 and the policy as it's written today can continue to do that. And it also allows for us in a rapidly changing marketplace to be nimble and flexible with board approval, similar to how we do tuition every few years now. So excited for further conversation to answer any questions.
Terrific, thank you. Well, we're now beginning to see why this is appropriate for board discussion. We have 2 points of view. And so for a third, Provost Falks.
And I have a second follow-up.
I thought you might, based on watching the conversation in the hall. Okay, you want to go now?
That was actually not the conversation.
Okay.
That was Yeah, I mean, what I will just say is we are, so our preference is to maintain the current policy, but we also are supportive of the need for delegated admissions. And so one of the things that we thought might be ideal is to stay with the current policy so that we can communicate, a standard approach across the universities in all modalities, but to broaden the flexibility for delegated admissions that would allow universities to, right now we have delegated admissions that allow you to have higher standards, but we might be able to fold in some of the other adjustments that are needed so that we still maintain one policy, but with a broadened definition of delegated. So sort of a combination of 1 and 2.
Appreciate that, Provost Gonzalez. You sound enormously well equipped to head to Congress and sculpt some neatly articulated compromises. All right, U of A.
Thank you for the opportunity to weigh in as well. I will say that we've had a lot of discussion on campus, and I will invite my colleague Casey Okitas to make a comment in just a minute. But I will say that after we've circled on this issue over the last weeks and months, we have settled on a preference for delegated admissions. And I'm going to echo my colleagues at NAU here. We really are thinking about this as a way to help us with the mission differentiation of the institutions. We can see ways to be more clear about mission differentiation with a delegated admissions policy, and also do yet more to meet the needs of Arizonan students and families. So we did end up with that as our highest preference, if you like. I will, however, hedge my bets and happily also echo Provost Gonzalez's position and say
She's getting a lot of promotions.
there are promotions. No matter what, we are at a position where we will need to amend the policy, because as we look to bring UAGC in, and I appreciate there was obviously a need to amend the policy. So it's not the only solution that can work for us, clearly. And I appreciate the comment that the provost made as well, that there are other ways forward that would be perfectly viable. I would, however, invite Casey Okitas to make a comment as well, because as you rightly pointed out, in her role, she really does live and die on this text. And it's really important that we do get this right to support the enrollment teams at each of the institutions. Casey.
Thank you, Provost folks, and thank you to the Regents for hearing us out today about the admission policy. I mean, we feel like we have been successful with the current policy, and we've been able to do some of the things that you've seen over the last few years with bringing in more academically prepared classes. And but as we look at bringing in UAGC, and we see those admission requirements, which are Andrew showed up on the screen and are also in your packet, they are so different than where the University of Arizona or ASU or NAU may be going, that it feels like it might be the best approach to have a delegated admissions policy for each institution, R2, as well as the others, to be able to really outline that. And I think we can be very, very transparent, ensure that high school counselors and our students know what we're all about and what opportunities they have and how they can attain their education at one of R2 or the other institutions in the state through a delegated policy.
Right. Thank you. Ken, I'm going to give you a chance. I don't know if you want to take it, but everybody else has had theirs, so I want to make sure you...
Well, here's a microphone.
Okay.
So, Regent Duvall, I really appreciate the discussion on this topic. I would ask the board, as you consider these options, to also be mindful of the need to strengthen educational attainment in partnership with K through 12. And so for the past 15 or so years, we have not been successful in getting more students university ready. So as we look at these standards, and Provost Gonzalez spoke about assured admission and modifying delegated admission, and we're in lockstep with our two sister institutions to modify that delegated admission component. We need to get more students university ready. So through our partnership with Helios, through K through 12 partnership, we need to look at a way of helping students get to that 3.0 in 16 college preparatory units. When we ground ourselves in a data-informed decision-making process, our data shows for first-year students as well as transfer students that if students hit that milestone of a 3.0 and 16 college preparatory units, the chances for retention, progression, and degree attainment are much higher than those students who don't. And then for our transfer students, we tend to look at the standards separately, first year and transfer. For our transfer students, students who come to us with 56 credits or more, close to that finish line for the Associate of Arts degree, are much more likely to retain and graduate. So please let us be mindful of the walk along of how we can help our state help citizens become more university ready. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Let's open up for discussion, and I'll go first, and then I know our chair has a question. We talk about this mostly from the standpoint of widening access, but there's another component to it, and I just want to get clear on what it is. But on the Honors College side, is there assured admission based to the Honors College based upon achievement, or is that a discretionary process? How do we deal with the excellence side of the equation as opposed to the access side of the equation?
Well, for us, the Honors College is an application-based, more selective process that takes multiple factors into consideration. So unlike, assured admission based on just statistics, they apply to it, they write an essay, and so it's a different admissions process.
Is that true for everybody?
Yeah.
Also true at NAU that
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
But
Okay, great.
could I just add that they're admitted to the institution?
First.
It's a separate application then to the Honors College, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Chair Manson?
Thank you. So I'm going to go the other side of the equation. And we have talked, all three of you have talked about access. Many other states, so our minimum assured admissions is 3.0. Many other states have minimum assured admissions at 2.5.
Yep.
That obviously opens up a completely different student profile with the initial knowledge that they can apply and be accepted. What kind of impact would you guys see? And I'm not advocating one way or the other, I just don't know. What kind of impact would you all see if the assured admissions GPA was taken to 2.5? And is that something that we would want to think about more in a delegated environment than doing across the board for all three institutions?
I'll reverse order this time. Liesl?
Oh, hot seat. I would absolutely be interested in exploring that as a way to increase access. You are doubtless aware that all three of our institutions struggle with retention and completion, and that would factor heavily into the discussion about is that a good idea or not. Almost certainly, it would necessitate different types of programming to make sure that students were able to succeed. We want to meet students' academic aspirations. We do not want to bring students into the system and have them not succeed. So that's a tough, big, hairy question to chew on.
and I'll start, and then I'd like to pitch this also to Vice President Olson. When we look at the delegated sector of our admissions, there's an interaction between the completion of courses and the GPA, and that's how we tend to manage that in relation to, of course, to the concern about the potential of the student to be successful. It seems to me that this is an area where we would want to be very thoughtful, but also where I could see value in us having some flexibility, and that could be in the form of having a delegated approach to admissions in general, or retaining the flexibility we now have to handle that in a way that's fitting with the kinds of programs that we offer in relation to the student populations that we're serving, and yes, the capacities we have to support students for success. Annika?
I think NAU is very interested in having further discussion. When we look to our own data, both for first year and transfers, we see different things in an entry GPA and success. For transfers, it's fairly linear. They perform well when transferring. For first year students, it looks a little different. Our students that sit at a 2.9 or 2.85 fare as well as those at a 3.0. So we want to take that into consideration. I would be remiss if I didn't mention our community college partners as well, and we want to make sure that given their enrollment challenges, we're strong partners with them for not only our transfer pipeline, but for those students that maybe are closer to that 2.5, that really starting at a community college may be the best for their situation. So to echo Provost folks, I think we don't want to recruit someone that's not going to retain and be successful.
Right. Well,
So it's
and that, I
balanced.
mean, that flows in with NAU's A++. So
Absolutely.
I can understand where it would fit there.
Yeah, I think the other universities have outlined the key issues. I think one is student success, and we do have good data if we do look at those who come in with various deficiencies, that the retention rates do significantly drop. Actually, we go from about an 87% with no deficiencies, with one deficiency, down to about 79%, and then with two or more, we're going down to low 70s. So we do see these differences in students who come in with less preparedness. So I think the issue really is student success and retention. And then also, as Kent mentioned, what are we communicating to our K-12 partners about, their role in making sure that we have students who are college ready? So I think those are definitely the issues that we would want to consider.
So is a deficiency in the grade point average equally weighed with a deficiency which is a poor grade in one of the core courses?
We actually have a lot of data that we've looked at. It does vary depending on where the deficiencies sit. So that was a kind of a global report that I was giving you on those statistics, but we have drilled down to look at where those deficiencies might be, and we do get differences.
Do you all know kind of what percentage you admit right now under delegation that fall in that 2.5 to 3.0 range?
I'll let Kent respond.
Not on the top of my brain chip in terms of precise with the first year class of 14,000. Again, Regent Manson, we try to skate with our university partners and especially in-state. So we've taken our first year in-state class in 2015 from 6,500 students to now this past year, close to 8,900. So the goal is to get more of our citizens to join us when they're ready, etc. Matt Lopez, who runs our admission services team, will look at students as it relates to their grade point average, college preparatory curriculum, as Regent Gonzalez says, and we've got data that we can, I did it again. My boss, Provost Gonzalez, says we look at deficiencies very differently. And some students who may have a deficiency in science and math, who want a science and math intensive major, we've got to be really careful about sending them a wrong message if they have a high grade point average. So we can get you those intricacies, but we look at it that way. We allow students to take a second major. Many of our students in WP Carey may not have the math aptitude. So we have to be extremely sensitive about that type of what we would consider individual review before we move the student into delegated admission.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions from board members?
I say they're looking for numbers right now.
Oh, okay.
Just an update from the question that you asked, Chair Manson, is that we below a 3.0, this is, I don't have it broken down by resident and non-resident with me today, but in total, it's about 5 to 8% that are below a 3.0. So that would be between likely that 2.5 and 2.99.
You're waiting for Bjorn's numbers? Okay.
When you've got them, signal me.
Thank you.
In the meantime, let me go the opposite direction and pose something which either will open up a long conversation or be extremely short. As a component part of our further delineation of missions and brands of the universities, has U of A ever considered upscaling their admission standard to 3.1, 3.2?
We have. You have prompted that discussion with this opening this particular dialogue. I wouldn't say we've done a deep analysis yet of what that might do, but yes, that is literally this discussion has put that on the table for consideration. I think for the first time in multiple years. Would that be fair, President Robbins, that we really are now taking a deep dive on what that might look like?
Yeah, I think Andrew can confirm. When I arrived, I talked about this very thing, that and it's been alluded to, but I want to put a finer point on it. If we want to increase our retention and graduation rate, we up our standards of admission. And then, of course, we have to balance the access issue. But just to be fairly blunt about this goes on everywhere, even at some of our finest private institutions. You can't get into the first-time, full-time cohort at some universities, and I won't name names, but you're told pretty specifically, if you'll go over to the community college, we'll take you into our January admissions.
That's right.
Because then you aren't part of the statistics.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Just saying.
Just saying.
Very good, okay. I was waiting for that hand, Regent Herbal.
I have a question in regard to what a high school diploma means these days. Because my perception is this has been watered down so significantly. I mean, if you read the popular literature, you know, of maybe at most 40% are proficient in math and reading at most high schools, but yet they're graduating 95% of the students. So we have to be extremely careful in terms of what this means when we're accepting a student. Another thing I worry a lot about is what does it mean to have graduated from college? And it seems to me that 95% of our discussion is around making it easier and doing the same thing that the high schools do. In other words, water down the standards so that everybody gets a college degree. And lo and behold, wake up someday and say, oh, you have a degree from University of Arizona. I know that's not worth much compared to private schools or whatever. I think that concept, that notion is alive and well. The third comment I have is related to UAGC. I think this is the golden opportunity to raise the standards of UAGC so that it basically is treated just like they do at ASU, which is it's the same standard as the on-campus student, with some exceptions that were delineated by Nancy. But I think that if we go ahead and allow UAGC to continue to exist in its current form, it will atrophy the reputation of University of Arizona. And I take the big swallow right now and suck it in, and it'll mean flushing out a lot of students. But we got to get serious. What does it really mean in the US to have a college degree? We talk about attainment. That shouldn't be our goal. Our goal should be quality students coming out of our universities that are successful. That's what I'm excited about. And I'm not excited about meeting an enrollment target. That's the wrong target. And we should adjust our finances accordingly if we're not going to make a particular target. But the notion that we just have to create huge quantities of college, so-called college graduates, that's the wrong mentality. So these discussions about lowering standards really irk me.
Thank you.
Period.
Appreciate it. Other comments, questions? Yes, oh, NAU statistics coming in.
I have your answer. Hot off the press.
Right, NAU income.
So back in fall 20, we were just under 20% admitted below a 3.0. For fall 22, we were at 15% below a 3.0 admitted of all first-year students in state and out of state.
Very good. All right. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to endeavor to comment a little bit, Regent Herbold, on your comments and just say that we share your concern about quality. I think, I'm sure I could speak for all of us and say that much. And I'll go farther and say that at NAU, we think a lot about our very important role in developing human talent. And so we're, in wanting to create access, I just would say we're not in any way implying that access to perhaps a greater range of students that haven't previously, may not have previously pursued higher education, would be related in any way or correlated in any way with the diminishment of standards or expectations for how the students would, what they would learn and what they would accomplish by the time that they graduate. I think the data are pretty clear that having a college degree still is very much a potent determinant of earnings and wealth and advancement in various fields. And we are very attentive to ensuring that the students that we admit find their way to a path where they can be successful and achieve what we've set out for them, what our faculty have set out for them, and think that we shorten it and talk about access and attainment, but what we're really talking about is driving upward mobility and having a positive social and economic impact on the state.
Thank you. Andrew.
I just wanted to interject something. When we were doing some of the homework to prepare for this discussion, it was interesting that some of the better regarded studies about what variables you could look at to predict at least first year success in college. And it turns out that high school GPA is of course the best. Obviously standardized tests are closely correlated with that, but usually the vote goes to high school GPA because it's a little broader rounded. But interestingly, for the statistics nerds in the audience, the explained variance of high school GPA on first year success is only about 30-40%, depending on which study you look at. So it's the best predictor we have, all right? But it is not the be all and end all predictor. There's so many other things that relate to first year success, let alone other success. About life. We have the same things that cause attrition in the student body, whether it's finances or personal stuff or family or whatever. So it's worth remembering that this is not a sort of adjust the volume on one slider and you get more or less students with success. It's a much fuzzier relationship than that. It just happens to be the thing that's widely measured and that we could easily use, but by far from being the only metric out there.
Thank you. The category life is messy.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. Yes.
I would just like to say something that often students, as I've seen being on the floor in the classroom, might come in with a lower GPA, but their experience at the university is what causes them to excel. And I have seen many freshmen come in sort of shaky, and we can't fix all the high schools or the tributaries coming into the universities. What we can do is give them the desire and the ability to then excel. So I also agree it's not a one slider, that often those that come in with a lower GPA can excel quite a lot. So don't discount that. That's it.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Nancy.
Maybe sort of going back to what I was advocating earlier, I mean, perhaps that we're at a point where it's not clear if we were going to change the standard overall, where it would be. But if we allow flexibility and we allow pilots to continue, we'll learn a lot more about whether, in fact, we can, meet that other 70% of variance in who's going to succeed with all of the other efforts that are going to be put forward. So again, that brings me back to, perhaps we stick with the current model, but allow greater flexibility and allow pilots so that we can learn more about where we need to be as a state. And I do think, if I can say so, that we need to be wary about communicating a broader message about Arizona changing standards. I mean, we've had hits, if you think about University of Phoenix and some of those admissions issues, and we sort of don't want to go down a path where I think we're conveying the wrong message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well put. All right, by way of closing this, I want to look at John and Chad. So where does this work now reside? We've got some assignments, some universities are doing some studies and some work. Would we anticipate that this topic will mature and then come back before this committee?
With the executive director's permission, our intention is now to take the elements of this discussion, work as a board staff team to put out a revised policy, if you will, if necessary, and then bring it back for this committee for further discussion as soon as possible. We were thinking.
If I can, not that Chad's wrong, that's right. But just to add context, on the current timeline, UAGC is supposed to enter the University of Arizona on July 1st. And so this board needs to take some kind of action between now and July 1st to accommodate or deny the requested admission standards for the UAGC students.
I see. We have not formally accepted the exception that would allow for the
That
integration. I
is
see.
correct.
Okay.
And there's a number of ways we can do that. Now typically, it takes 2 of our regularly scheduled board meetings to change a policy.
Yeah.
We only have 2 left between now and July 1st. The other way to do that, and so one path is to try to develop a full revision of the policy that accommodates UAGC. Another path is to adopt an exception to policy or delegate additional authority to the universities to do pilots. And one approach could be to develop policy around pilot programs. You know, the universities can do pilot programs that include online students, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But give some sort of safe harbor for UAGC while we continue to discuss a broader policy change. So all kinds of possibilities, but the real question is, if we're going to do a policy change that's effective by July 1st, we need to bring that to the April board meeting. So I would anticipate having an additional conversation, you know, with the provost, the presidents, yourself, Mr. Chair, to see what we want to do in April. Because if it's, let's move forward with a policy change, but we need to bring that in April. If it's some sort of safe harbor, that gives us a little more flexibility, but we need to adopt that in June. So we don't have a ton of time.
And because of the way we agendize this meeting, we can't move to a motion, should the board decide they wanted to do the exception as a one-off for UAGC in order to sort of clear that issue from our decks while we look at the more broad issue.
That is, I think we would have to bring that into the April board meeting. If that is the desire of the committee, so we can bring that motion to the April board meeting.
Yeah, okay.
And then that would clear that issue
Right.
while we look at a broader solution set for the overall issues we have in admissions policy.
Okay. Chad, you were right. All right, good, thank you.
I didn't know that was in doubt.
Often wrong, but never in doubt. All right.
All good heart surgeons.
Okay, terrific. We are on to item number 2, and we have the right cast of leaders to have this conversation. The next agenda item is the request from the University of Arizona for a new novel program. Arizona is requesting to offer a novel master's program in business analytics at the Chandler location. ASU has objected to Arizona's request, and the committee will hear from both universities and be asked to make a recommendation to the board. We'll proceed in this manner. The U of A will make its case regarding the program, and then we'll ask Provost Gonzalez to respond. So, Liesl, to you.
Is the Regents Cup at risk here?
There's more of the roses.
We'll see if the provosts have learned from the Regents Cup and a civil discourse.
That's right. Does this fall under debate or storytelling?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like I should have brought a whole team with me.
Yeah.
Some coaches.
We're here.
All right. We're delighted to have this discussion. The University of Arizona has a terrific site in the city of Chandler, and as part of our strategy for Maricopa County, we're interested in expanding our offerings there. We did present the strategy to the regents last year, I think on 2 separate occasions at 2 separate meetings. And articulated within that strategy was our goal to grow to some 6,500 students in Maricopa County, and particularly expand academic offerings where strategic opportunities exist. And we believe that this degree, a Master of Science degree in business analytics, is exactly such an opportunity for us. considering this as an opportunity, we've dug deeply in the data available for the demand for people who are trained with business analytics degrees. And I will share that both Maricopa County data, but also the US Department of Labor statistics projections indicate a strong growth. Indeed, these are among the strongest growing professions in the nation for at least the next decade, which is probably no surprise to the people in this room who rely intensively on analysts for all of our organizations. Just some specific figures. The Arizona Commerce Authority shows high needs in numerous job categories related to this degree. They project that by 2029 in Maricopa County alone, there'll be more than 6,000 job openings annually that would match the qualifications of this degree. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics provides for Maricopa County an estimate for the most relevant occupations, an estimate of around 3,100 openings per year. And importantly, the growth rate for these types of jobs is running very high at around 10% per annum, actually 11% technically. So what makes us think this is an opportunity for the University of Arizona? The data show that today we're currently producing about 930 such graduates a year across all institutions in the state. So there's a significant gap of more than 2,000 positions a year. Obviously, what happens then is we start bringing in talent from other states. I recognize that has an economic benefit for the state of Arizona. We do like that also, but not as much as we would like to see Arizonans trained up to go into these jobs. The degree would be offered by our Ella College of Management, which of course has a very strong reputation in the state. So we do believe that students will be attracted to obtaining an Ella degree in this space. It will also provide significant and convenient upskilling opportunities for students that are already here in the Chandler area and working and are interested in moving into well-remunerated roles that have a data analytical component in the business sector. I also want to just note that Phoenix is the fifth largest city in the US, and what we know is when there's unmet needs, educational needs, that where the public universities are not addressing the workforce needs, what happens next is private universities move into that space and eat our lunch for us. And that has happened already here in Phoenix. We see private universities moving into niche disciplines. We view this as a way of forestalling further inroads into what is, of course, what we view as our main market, the state of Arizona. So I think that lays out why we think this is important to the University of Arizona. And I'm happy, of course, to take any questions, but I think we're going to hear from Provost Gonzalez.
Yeah, let's do this together and then open it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present our concerns and reactions regarding the University of Arizona's proposal. So the request before you that Provost folks just outlaid is ostensibly about a degree and location, but ultimately you're being asked to decide what restrictions on competition should exist between the three public universities. Well, the question today is whether the University of Arizona should offer the MS in Business Analytics. The question tomorrow could well be whether ASU can offer engineering programs in Tucson or in Sierra Vista. So just to be clear that is the issue before you, and clearly this is your decision to contemplate. So regarding the specific request, there are three key reasons we think that we are opposed to University of Arizona's proposal. First, and most important, ASU has multiple graduate programs already in Metro Phoenix in business analytics that currently have excess capacity, and in which we have recently made significant investments in new faculty. The ASU MS in Business Analytics, which is just one of those programs, but specifically does not cap enrollment and not only welcomes but seeks additional enrollment. We've put a heavy investment in these programs. There are over 13 master's degrees currently already approved and on our books to address this need. Second, I appreciate the economic data presented by Provost folks. Some of it, however, really is somewhat mixed, because the data cited from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, for example, is focused on bachelor's degrees and is focused on need across the entire United States. These data can overestimate the need for graduate degree holders, specifically in Arizona. And then finally, ABOR is the fiduciary authority responsible for both University of Arizona and ASU. Unfettered competition between us is not in the state's interest, and will simply squander the strategic investments you have already made. So those are my main points. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's open it up for discussion, comments. Would like to?
Questions from the board? All right, so I'll start.
Yes, please, Madam Chair.
I'll break the ice. So a couple of quick questions for you, Lisa. Modality of this program?
Hybrid. It will have an in-person component, because for programs like this, teamwork is an important part of the operation. It is, however, of course, everybody's wants flexible schedules and so on, so there will be hybrid operations.
And the finances of this program, is it self-sustaining?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So tuition revenue, tuition revenue will cover all the expenses associated with. Is Chandler contributing?
Chandler, the city of?
Correct.
They are contributing through support for the infrastructure in Chandler, not specifically to this program, broadly to the infrastructure that we've got there, which you've seen, of course.
Okay. My inclination is to say yes to U of A's request, and here's why. The competition issue for me is an issue by issue, location by location situation. ASU sits in the metropolitan center, population center of this state. To say that no other schools could come in here and offer programs that ASU already offers, in a way, gives ASU a monopoly in here, which we have heard multiple times is not to the state's best interest. You know, President Crow has said that, and more times than not has said, you know, we'll take anybody who wants to come here because we need more education in Maricopa County. We can't do it by ourselves. So, and I do believe that these degrees are only going to become more important, more in demand, and they are degrees that can be done. Arizona students can take those degrees and work elsewhere, because a lot of this can be done remotely. So as long as the program is self-supporting, and as long as, you know, Chandler is not the home of ASU at the moment. You know, Mesa is very much, you know, ASU's market in the East Valley. I'm inclined at the levels of enrollment expected to let ASU do this, you know, let U of A do this partly because I think it does create some competition, which I don't think is an all bad idea. And I think that Eller's reputation will help them.
I just had a quick question for Lisa as well. Thank you, Mr. Committee Chair. Will you be, given your location from a Maricopa County standpoint, do you plan to also draw in from Pinal County? I mean, when we look at Lucid and the other sort of incredible sort of manufacturing development that's going on in that part of Arizona, I would imagine that that's also going to be a potential draw, or as that?
I mean, very reasonably. I mean, there's no boundary. Students can apply from anywhere, right? So it's not. There's no dotted line around the geography. And you're absolutely right that there are big workforce needs in exactly that neighboring region that,
and I think
presumably could be well served. Do we have a particular strategy around marketing in that community? I wouldn't have said so at this point in time. That would be still in the pipeline.
So one of the things I'd propose to you all to consider is a strategy there, and really to having a good sense of what the economic development plans are in that area. I know Sandra Watson, the director of the Arizona Department of Commerce Authority, not Department of Commerce anymore. That was like 25 years ago. And also Pinellas County's efforts. They partner quite a bit.
Excellent.
And OEPAD before that, if you would.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, good, Regent Mano.
Thank you, Chair Duvall. Do you know what the competition is doing? Other university besides ASU?
Oh, yes. Yes, we've done a deep dive on what's going on in the marketplace generally. Our relatively new Dean of Ella has come to us from Purdue, where he instituted and brought online a similar program, or brought to fruition, I don't mean to online learning, brought to fruition a similar program. And so he came in with a very deep understanding of what the competitive landscape looks like. And so Ella's done a lot of research on what are competitive programs doing, what are the most attractive programs in the country doing to make sure that they're attracting students and being relevant to serving the needs of the business community.
Thank you.
Yeah. And there are it's a relatively common degree type at this point. It's not like a new widget. It's something that people go out and look for on a routine basis. It's a relatively well-recognized degree name. Not every institution has it, but it's relatively
Thank you.
normal.
But may I ask clarification of your question? I took your question to mean, what is the competition doing in Maricopa County? And I don't know exactly, but I'm pretty sure Wharton has programs here, as well as many other private institutions.
Yeah, it was both. Yeah, and thank you for clarifying, because as Chair Manson said, if we don't do it, the competition will continue to do it. And then how to fill that pipeline of the workforce, regardless of how many of us are doing it, but also having a hybrid program, which is online and in person. So students have that ability to choose, because no matter where you come from, even though we're trying to fill the pipeline in Maricopa or in the state of Arizona, I feel that we have to have a seat on the table to be able to compete with even those universities. And thank you for that clarification, President Robbins. Yeah, and thank you for your comments to Liesl. So yeah, thank you.
Yes, Regent Mano.
How much of this was driven by, we need more revenue, here's a way to generate some?
Regent Herbold, I hope that you won't be offended when I say all of our decisions are driven, at least in part, by a need to keep an eye on the top line.
Yes. Primarily, that would be wrong.
That would be, well, it is an important consideration. We do not want to be introducing new degree types that would not be fiscally responsible. So the discussion around what the workforce needs and what the university's revenue aspirations are always proceeds in concert. We're always looking to make sure that we're meeting workforce needs in ways that also allow us to be fiscally responsible for the institution. So I don't think you can decouple those two questions cleanly.
So the thing that bothers me is now we're going to have two schools investing in faculty, investing in management to launch programs that are exactly the same. So I'm negative on this for that reason, in that I think it's not a good use of the state's money.
So I will only point out that, like ASU, we already have faculty in this space. We are not necessarily changing the number of faculty that we would have at either institution as we move into this space.
I think to a great extent, we're setting a precedent here. And I worry more about the precedent, to tell you the truth, that why don't you just get the course catalog from ASU and start down the list duplicating? And that's dead wrong for the state. So that's why I'm not too high on this thing.
Regent Canyon.
Thank you. To that point, what does differentiate this program from ASU? If you could just clarify, because if there is a significant factor, then I think that would be important to know.
I regret that I'm not well prepared to answer that. There would, of course, be differentiators. I just didn't come prepared with the deep understanding from the Eller faculty about what would be the differentiating aspects. These are rapidly evolving fields. I mean, just think about the churn that's coming down the pike with GPT and artificial intelligence in this very field of business analytics. These are very rapidly changing degree. The content in these degrees is changing very quickly at this point in time, and I regret that I didn't ask the dean to provide me with that list of like today's differentiators when we look at these two degrees. Remember, this is an existing degree at the University of Arizona. This is an existing degree and an existing location, so it's a new combination request. So it's not some new number of faculty, it's not something different for the state. It is just a new location for an existing degree that is on the table here.
Okay. President Robbins.
I could just add, Regent Conyer, that certainly Eller has some differentiation in this area. The MIS program at Eller is one of the top in the country. So I think for business analytics,
The top.
number one.
I mean, just saying.
Number one. So I think that's a differentiation. And particularly our new dean is an expert in this area. And I think it's something that would be very attractive to people if they were looking, well, how do I decide if I want to get a business analytics degree from Cary versus Eller? Well, let's look into, how they're differentiated. I think people would come quickly to the fact that we're number one in MIS, and that would help. To Regent Herbert's comments, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the city government of Chandler asked us to bring this degree in because there's a huge need for workforce opportunity for these degrees. And certainly they could go to ASU and get these degrees, but I think competition is really good. And to the comments about having engineering in Tucson, as I've told President Crow many times, if he thought that was a good idea, he would have done it 10 years ago. We welcome him to bring his engineering program to Tucson, and we welcome the competition.
Thank you, Mr. President. Other comments, Regis? Yes.
Yeah,
Regent?
just to the point of differentiation, our W.P. Carey School is also a top-ranked school, and just in business analytics specifically, we have 13 different programs. And then if you expand that definition to think about business analytics as it applies to many different areas, you could add another 21 degrees between W.P. Carey and Thunderbird School of Global Management. And we are located in both downtown Tempe and the Poly campus with our degrees. So we are spanned out across Maricopa County with very significant offerings.
Okay. Other comments, questions? I do regret that Regent Penley isn't here. I know he has views on this, but anyone else? All right, hearing none, this is an action item. I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval the University of Arizona's request to offer its existing MS program in business analytics at its Chandler location. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
I can't vote, can I? No.
No.
I don't think so.
I will get to vote at the board tonight.
Apparently, Regent Herbold, we're adopting Robert's rules, not Fred's rules. Yeah, the motion carries. Okay, item number 4 is an update on the strategic vision and plan for the University of Arizona's College of Applied Science and Technology. Provost Folks is here to provide the committee with an update, and so Laura, over to you, Liesl.
Thank you, Regent Duval. And thank you for inviting us to share an update on branch campus at Sierra Vista. I have invited Dean Gary Packard to join us, and I don't think we've had Gary here to present to you before, which is an oversight on my part. But we're delighted to have this opportunity. I will hand over the floor to Gary, but I also want to point out that we did share some background information for everybody in the red folders, if you want to have a look at that at your leisure. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce and hand over to Dean Packard to share an update from his leadership perspective, as Gary is the ranking administrator, if you like, for the University of Arizona in Sierra Vista, and he has a deep passion for the work that he's doing there. Over to you, Dean Packard.
Thank you, Provost, folks, and Regents. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here this morning. Good morning, and also welcome to all the community and state and university leaders and citizens for this opportunity to tell about what we are doing down in Sierra Vista. I am Gary Packard, as Provost folks mentioned. I have been the Dean of the College of Applied Science and Technology and the Senior Administrator down in Sierra Vista since September of 2020. If you recall, CAST, or the College of Applied Science and Technology, was created in September of 2019. So I'm the inaugural dean for that campus, and I absolutely love what I do in Sierra Vista and happy to tell our story. So thank you for this great opportunity. In the red folder is a copy of the slides if you want to follow along, as well as some of our recent marketing materials for your reading after this, and a card if anyone wants to contact me with questions after. So let me turn to the slides real quick. If we'll go to slide 2, which is a timeline. I won't go through the slides in detail because I know we're at limited time, but I'll highlight 1 or 2 things on each slide and then hopefully have some conversation and questions with you when I am finished. So what I'll highlight on this slide is 1, the mission and vision statement. There's a key word I want to pull in that really drives what we are in Sierra Vista, and that's the idea of convergence. The 4th Industrial Revolution, the modern 21st century, it's really a human machine teaming cloud-based infrastructure. That's what defines what the world looks like today. You can't get to this meeting, you can't have this meeting without all 3 of those pieces being a part of that puzzle. That's the foundation of the programming, and what we're trying to do in this college is really focus on the future while making these students, as transfer students, career ready for their jobs today. So that's the combination of the mission we're after. The storyline's quite simple. The story started with soldiers at Fort Huachuca back in the 1960s, through a microwave connection up to main campus. It then grew to a citizenship base. So we added the whole citizenship of the region to that in the 1990s when the campus was officially started. Then in the 2000s, it really branched out to the state as we were in Chandler and Yuma and Douglas and Nogales and several places around the state. And then now currently as CAST, we are nationwide and international through our cyber program primarily in its growth. So it's not doing one or the other, it's adding a piece throughout its journey, and we'll continue to add that as we move forward. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see a list of our degrees and programs currently. I'll highlight 2. 1, you'll see a very clear diversity of degrees. Cyber is certainly at the core of what we do that represents cyber and computing. Computing represents about 2/3 of our students, but you'll also see a very strong social science oriented core as we talk about resiliency and living in the 21st century on the human side of the coin. So both of those, that's the convergence idea, bringing them together. And you'll also see that we are proposing, and it'll be hopefully coming up to ABOR here, a Master's of Science degree in Cyber and Information Operations as our first foray into graduate study. So as we grow up into be what I'll call a real college at a R1 university with research and graduate programs, that will be our first step into that water with a new master's degree this fall, we hope. On the next slide is a picture and a depiction of our virtual learning environment. It is really the core of how we got to where we are. A brief description for context. It has 15,000 AI-driven robotic personalities in it. So these are all capable of doing interaction with each other within a synthetic environment, so that these AI bots do commerce together. They have Twitter equivalent accounts, they have Facebook equivalent accounts, they have LinkedIn accounts, they have Indeed accounts, they have the entire business world. And what it does is it replicates or digitally twins what the cyber world looks like for students in a live, evolving environment. So it's not just a simulation, but these bots over the last 2 years have posted 24 million independent tweets and social media posts into our own environment. They do commerce in the stores there. So we have all the business records and the databases for research and protection and cybersecurity. And what it creates for students is the capability of actually practicing real world skills while they're in the classroom. And so it becomes that environment. Why does it have to be synthetic? Because we teach offensive cyber. That's a unique part of our program. You do not want us having our students in the real internet doing this because one, you would not be happy with me, and two, I would have to go to jail and maybe the provost and the president too, because we can't do that. So we don't want to do that. So that's what this environment. The thing I want to point out about it, and you see down at the bottom, is that we have another university, another state that pays us a $10 million contract to use our environment branded for their program. And we just got the U.S. Army to agree to put one of their intelligence school programs into our environment, and we think that's just the tip of the iceberg for that. This is the Gatorade of our college. I'll just put it that way, that I think this is an incredibly marketable tech transfer skill and intellectual property that the University of Arizona has through this program that we are going to be able to take great advantage of as we continue to evolve it. The other thing is we're building a digital engineering capability into it, which is really going to be an important thing as we move into helping engineering programs and other programs. So how do you do AI-driven designing work within this environment? So that's coming out next too. The next slide that you will see, we'll talk about actually our growth in the college. I do believe that some numbers were presented to the A board that were smaller than these. So let me explain the difference between my numbers and what you're seeing. The numbers that I believe you have, which show around 1,500, 1,400 and change students, those are active majors in the program. So those are students who have a major for a bachelor's degree who are in the program enrolled this term. What this number is, it lists all of the students enrolled, whether they're active or not, to include those who aren't majors. So it includes almost 500 certificate program students we have. Our undergraduate certificate in cybersecurity has over 400 students in it. It is the biggest by far undergraduate certificate program at the university, and it is an incredibly important part of the workforce development portfolio. We have a lot of companies that are paying their employees who already have bachelor's degrees to take this certificate to upscale their cyber skills. And so that's an incredibly important mix of our workforce development planning. The other gap in the number is right now, right over 550 students who are enrolled in programs, but not actively in a classroom. That's a really common ebb and flow for us as an online college because our average age student, as you can see, is 31. The thing we get mostly from students is they've had a work change. They've had a baby. If they're a military member, they've moved stations or they've been deployed. And they will come back, most of them. But to see this gap in enrollment is a really common process for us. It actually went a little bit higher at the beginning of this year because of recession and other things, but as of the second half of the semester, it's come back down to normal averages. So we're right about where we normally see with enrolled students, but not active in our programs. The next slide is one of my favorite ones. It's one of my most exciting things going on. It's how we're going to grow in Sierra Vista. Back when this campus was put in Sierra Vista, the community was heavily invested. It stayed a very quiet night school, finishing school type of college for a long time, and the cyber program had exploded. So how do we stay viable in the city of Sierra Vista and help them with economic development? So I spent a lot of time with the mayor and the Chamber of Commerce and the economic development manager and commission in the city. They're wanting to grow a much clearer city center on the west end, right outside the Buffalo Soldier Gate at Fort Huachuca. There was a building capability there. We did a master plan that said we were going to have to acquire more square footage for the campus over the next 5 to 10 years. This became a very economical way for us to do that without having to build a $20 to $30 million building and move into where the city wants to grow, to put the brand of the University of Arizona right in the city center that you can't miss when you go through the bypass of Sierra Vista. The advantage to our programs will be is we'll have a better capability to serve soldiers being right outside their gate. And that's where all the defense contractors sit. And as a cyber college, that's the partnership I need corporately within the city. And so we are actually working a plan with the city to use that to bring more defense contractors into southeastern Arizona and into Sierra Vista to grow their economic engine outside the fort. So it's a very great partnership, good partnership between us and the city and the university to make this happen. The last two slides, the financial trend slide, I won't spend a lot of time on because it really mirrors the growth. And if you see, it's a very similar curve to what you saw with the growth in the number of students. We are primarily a student credit hour driven college because of our foundation as an undergraduate transfer college. We are working right now with the provost and the university to diversify that in both research. So we've grown from, we showed 1,000% growth in research this year. Which means we didn't really have anything and now we have something is what that means. But we went from a very small amount to $1.96 million this year, and we've got $2.6 million in research grants sitting in proposals right now. So if I come back in a year or two, our goal is by 2027 to add $20 million to the research portfolio of the U of A and our college in Sierra Vista, something that's never been done in Sierra Vista. That will help with a lot of the economy issues in that community as well. And the other is to grow an endowment for our college. We do not have an endowment. We've never had an endowment, so we're working hard with the University of Arizona Foundation to grow our capability to actually recognize nationally and with naming opportunities some things in the community that will help them bring that forward. And then the last slide I'll briefly talk about is our marketing snapshot. You will see at the top of it, it has an Arizona emphasis. The program in cyber grows nationally faster than it does within the state is the simple answer to this. When it was started with a lot of federal government work, and that grew a very national. And when I showed up as dean, I didn't want to get away in the way of that growth. We had about 1,000 students when I started. We're now at almost 3,000, and point in time comparison on the same numbers. That's a tripling of the growth over a 2.5-year span, and that's driven a lot by federal workers, by soldiers who PCS or move away from the state of Arizona, so they might start here, but then they go somewhere else, by the National Security Agency needs, and so on and so forth. So what we've done in year 3, now that we've got that momentum sustained, is we are now putting efforts into hiring a team, an enrollment team and a recruitment team dedicated specifically for the state of Arizona so that we can have the same impact here in the state. And so we've got people up here in Maricopa County and Yuma County and Pima County and Cochise County working on bringing Arizona citizens more into our program and getting more industry within the state of Arizona wanting to fund their employees to take our program in cybersecurity. So that's the story. It's a great story. I think we're on a great trajectory. I predict that their end state will be sitting at 5,000 to 7,000 students total in the campus. To give you context, it was about 460 before the cyber program started. So that's a pretty good story to tell. So I'll take any questions that you might have for me. President Robbins.
First, President Robbins.
No, I would just ask the dean to tell everyone where the cybersecurity program is ranked nationally.
Oh, I will tell that. If you forget, it's in red on the cover. There's a group called, thank you, President, for doing that. I should have just highlighted that and then shut up and taken questions. But there's a group called Academic Influence, and I'll tell this brief story because they partnered with DARPA. If you're not familiar with DARPA, they're the Defense Advanced Research Program for the Department of Defense, to create an AI-driven algorithm that would rank colleges that have online programs. We did not even know they were doing this. So unlike US News and World Report, where we all know what all the things are and we try to make sure that we adjust to them, I can't alter this. I got a note that this was actually published in Forbes when it started with, from a colleague, said, congratulations on your #1 rating. And we looked it up and it was in Forbes magazine, and we confirmed it with Academic Influence. So as you'd imagine, if you go to our website, it's posted all over there. But we are the #1 undergraduate online program in the nation in cyber operations by that ranking.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Dean, and I suspect Regent Mata's got a comment.
Yeah.
Before going there, I've got a comment and a question. But my comment is, first, my son is at the fort as we speak and taking classes, and so
very good.
I'm getting some eyesight on it, and I appreciate that. But I do want to talk about the two graphs because
yes,
I don't see the alignment, and I want to better understand it.
Yes,
your enrollment growth seems to uptick in 19 and 20, but the financial trends downtick in 19, 20, and 21.
That's an internal bookkeeping change is what that is. So the numbers went up because of the change in the budget models within the U of A and with our transition from UA South to being an academic college, the revenue model shifted there. So the students went up for a short period of time. The revenue went down just because of that shift, and now it's back up again from where we're going. So that's an internal bookkeeping
Okay.
thing. Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, Regent Mata.
Thank you, Chair Duvall. Congratulations.
Thank you, Regent Mata.
And not because I'm original from Sierra Vista, right? So I always have to be proud of what is going on in that southern part of the state. So, and I appreciate that you clarified the current headcounts versus our enrollment, because that was a concern, looking at numbers, since we look at data and data impact,
Yes.
the revenue. So one of the things that I see in the changes that the campus have had, working with the CG for Huachuca, which is very important, that we are committed, to work with the mayor and the biggest, employer in Sierra Vista. At the same time, it's not just Sierra Vista, it's the intelligence community. So the pipeline that we are working in, and because you have shifted some of the programs, and that's why we are intelligence, cybersecurity. What is the impact with students? I would say the transfer from college, right? Or the new students world, at the national and worldwide. But with the intelligence community, one of the concerns that we always have is the security clearances. How is that work? How is that work with the CG or the intelligence community? So, because we have a summit last year, and that was one of the biggest concern for any employers, in the United States. Can you comment on that?
I can. That's a very good question, and it's a very important part of what we're trying to do. On the actual getting student security clearances, we work with the University of Arizona's Applied Research Corporation, which has a presence in the refinery building on the south side of Tucson, which we've recently put an office in our college right below them, so I can work with them closely. They have built secured facilities in there and are working with us to hold clearances and help us get our students' clearances quicker. We have an advantage in that we have about 30, depends on the program. In cyber, it's closer to 50 to 60% of our students are either veterans or active duty military. And so a lot of those students come into the program with a clearance, and we take advantage of that as we move into classified work. It'll become more of an issue as we move into graduate programs, because at the undergraduate work, we can do most of our stuff outside the classified range. So it's really just some of our professors who are doing some classified work with national government agencies. But we are also looking at, as we expand into the west end of Sierra Vista, in the 5-year plan, we see a need for us to have a second secured computing facility in Sierra Vista in a new infrastructure right outside the gate. So we can partner with our defense partners and with the fort. The commanding general, Tony Hale, at the fort currently has offered us SCIF space on his fort if we are working with his people as well. So we have access to the secured facilities there on the fort if we have soldiers and airmen and so on who have the clearance to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a work in progress. It's a challenge across higher education to do this. Because there is a risk in security work from the state level, and that's why we have an affiliated 501c affiliated with the University of Arizona to manage that. Austin Yamada leads that group, and we work with him quite closely.
Thank you. I have another question. Yeah. So you mentioned OSINT.
Yes.
That program is growing, and how is that expansion on OSINT and how the future looks with OSINT, open source intelligence?
Yes.
Because that is, anyone can do it. There is the AI programs you can do, and it's very critical because your life is exposed no matter what. We think that we are secure, but at the same time, OSINT is one of the tools that everyone, whenever someone wants to come and
Sure.
see me or see you, they already investigated all about you. And even though you don't know, there are other tools. So tell me about that, because how sensitive is that program too? Because I see it that way, and how that will impact for the future.
So the program right now, and why we're working with them in the basic OSINT course out at the fort, is because we can do it at the unclassified level, at that level. To grow, our virtual learning environment was purposely built into AWS, into the AWS cloud. So it can go to aws.gov. It can transfer into aws.gov, which can be then done in a classified environment. So our virtual world can move into the classified world. So for example, we are currently working with a Ranger battalion at Fort Huachuca who is out at the fort doing exercises for the last 4 days. We have built training exercises for them into our virtual world. So they're out there doing both electronic warfare work as well as they're actually firing off mortars for the first time on the range in quite a while. So they're doing a full up exercise out there, and our college's program is helping them to create some of the planning scenarios that they're using to do that right now. And we can do that in the unclassified space for that. Yes.
Thank you for that clarification.
Good question.
Yes.
We received information in our prep for this meeting that indicated that graduate degrees have fallen 90% and undergraduate degrees have fallen 80% since 2017. How does that correlate to what we just heard? I think that it must mean you don't give many degrees. Chad, am I speaking out of term or what?
What I think we have here is definitional on the enrollment. The number of students at Sierra Vista has fallen significantly as CAST has moved more and more of its enrollment online for resident students. So that is the truth, because that is the numbers U of A gave me. So that
Right.
is the
So
truth.
I can address that.
Well, I'm going to go before you
Yes,
go and make
please.
another comment, which is when I arrived, we had an unusual mix of faculty at UA South, and they didn't have, they weren't affiliated with disciplinary colleges. And we did move some actual programs out of UA South back to the Tucson main campus, and like literally picked up whole degree types and moved them to the University of Arizona campus with their faculty to ensure that we had robust faculty support for those degrees. So there were some other operational things that happened before Dean Packard joined us. So if you're going back to 2017, you're seeing other operational shifts in the data set as well, not just things since Dean Packard
Yes.
joined us in 2019. So there's a lot going on there that meant that we were serving the same group of students through our distance campuses, but the degrees were headquartered at the Tucson campus.
But how does the data that we saw, which would suggest your funeral is 2 years away, compared to, I mean, we
I don't
heard
know.
robust numbers. I don't
Yeah,
get
I
it.
don't know what. data
Chad,
was-
what?
Yeah, I'd have to see the data that Chad has to
Yeah,
address
I don't know what
that.
would be.
President Robbins?
Yes,
May I be recognized?
you may be recognized.
Can you just tell them when the cybersecurity program started, how many students were in that program and how many are there today?
Yes, sir. We, in 2016, in its first semester, had 3 students. It now has over 1,500 students in it, 6 certificates and in our major.
So you're basically in the certificate business?
No, sir, that's only 500 of that 3,000 numbers I told you, that most of those students are enrolled in degree granting
Yeah.
programs.
I don't know.
I think the data that you're looking at, if you're looking at just Sierra Vista, under U of A CAST, or under UA South, before CAST was formed, there were many programs offered in education, in history, in English, and so on, that are no longer offered in Sierra Vista. So those programs that were typically in person, go to school after work, get your degree kind of programs, were not offered because most of those are now available online through main campus programs, and we don't want to duplicate what main campus is doing. And so what we're doing is shifting into more of a science and technology focus of CAST, which is what was created in 2019, and less in the humanities and the typical liberal education courses. And so my guess is I'd have to see the data specifically, and I'm happy to look at it and provide another report on that for you. But my guess is that's probably the number you're seeing, which wouldn't be captured in our data as a new college from 2019 forward.
Chad, could you meet with these folks and get that squared away?
Happily,
Sure.
Absolutely.
happy to do that.
We'll do
Regina.
a deep dive and get a review back.
Okay. President Robbins, and then Regina.
I also would like to address the rumors that we lose money at your college. Do we lose money at your
No, sir.
college?
In fact, I help pay for other things up on main campus on a regular basis.
Happily, he does that.
Yes, ma'am. It is I mean, our model is, and it is an important point, that the model that I've given to my team and that we are sustaining is that our student credit hours need to cover our expenses. And in my 3 years as a dean, it's not only covered, but it's exceeded it to the point that we're able to design what's going to be a very smart building as part of the west side of this. And we've been able to support other programs up on main campus. So we are a profitable college for the U of A.
Regent Mata, with your freedom, someone to follow up on that, I want to understand two different things.
Yes, sir.
Well, there are three different things. One is, are you profitable? You're addressing
Yes,
that.
sir.
Two is this issue of sort of what your profile is financially, enrollment, et cetera, where you and Chad have been assigned. The third, I think we haven't touched on it, and either today or in the future, would like to talk about the physical plan. You have moved from what was an in-person strategy to largely an online strategy. And what I am wondering is whether, and calculating how much you make or lose, whatever, may in part depend upon how you count the costs of carrying the infrastructure that is on the campus. Can you just briefly address the space utilization and
Yes.
the proper leveraging of the physical
Happy to do so.
capital investment that we have on that campus relative to the transition to an online program?
Happy to do so. We are not just an online undergraduate degree seeking program is the key part about what we want to create in Sierra Vista is both this hybrid in-person and online presence. And the online presence is going to be largely how we teach our classes. The in-person is the research and the community impact we can have by having a presence in Sierra Vista. So we are helping by having a structure there where our faculty and our staff who are in the region can work, where the community can come and use our facilities as part of the U of A's enterprise down in Sierra Vista. We are partnering with the workforce development needs of that community through what we do. Most of the companies in tech especially, when they are looking for programs, they are not looking for a classroom that they can send their students to. They're looking for an online presence that they can take while they're working. We're one of the fastest growing Guild Partner colleges, which is our corporate partnership program that we are partnered with the U of A. We have gone from hardly any to almost 200 of those students are now being fully funded by corporations, both in the state of Arizona and nationally, to take our courses online. The government is also looking for that program. And so having that presence with Fort Huachuca, we can go out, I'll use the Ranger exercise, because we're in Sierra Vista, we can go out and work with that Ranger battalion on the fort and actually help them with their program. If we were in a small building somewhere away from Sierra Vista, we would not have those kinds of opportunities. And so it's a thinking of education different, to be honest with you, of what we're doing. And it's a very broad-based definition of education that has to include workforce development and student development. I heard the conversation earlier about partnering with K-12. So we work, with the school districts and with getting cyber patriot programs into the schools and so on. We need physical presence for those kinds of things. So it's that really intricate hybrid, but the growth in this industry, if we want in the state of Arizona to actually push cyber education and being known as a cyber education state, which I think we do, you're not going to do that with in-person education. That's going to be an online enterprise, no matter where you put it.
Partially in-person because it gets my kid home.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And the graduate programs will all have an in-person component to them. They will be a hybrid program. So they will bring people in for that too as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mata, thank you for your
Thank you, Chair Duval. So just to clarify, although you're going to have a conversation with Chad, so the 1434 is the enrollment, and the head counts of 2,800 plus is two different numbers, and that's why maybe that's where our confusion are. So I just wanted to clarify that because that was my confusion too. Okay.
Yes.
And you explained that one thing is you explained it when you started the briefing.
Yes.
So I just wanted to
That is correct.
Yeah. So the second thing that I want to comment, your physical location. What is going to happen with the physical location where you are right now, because you're moving to the west side?
I think to be determined. We will have to. So the current location, I think, as most people know, is partly owned by the University South Foundation. So we have property that we actually still lease original buildings from the building of this campus in 1993, and they still own that part of the campus. And then that's about. That's 8 of the 12 acres of the current campus. The other 4 acres are owned by the state, and that each side has 3 buildings on it. So I'm working really hard with the University South Foundation to figure out what they are interested in doing long-term with their property, what the University of Arizona wants to do long-term with this property. what my prediction is, we're going to have to grow. I think the growth vector and the way we serve the citizens of Sierra Vista best is to grow in the West End, not the East End. So I think that's where you're going to see the growth. But to be determined, we want to see how this plays out, because there are things you could do with that other campus if there was enough momentum for other types of education. For example, there's a charter school right next to it. It could act, they want to grow a high school. It could be a great site for a charter school that maybe wants to move in and help us fuel some technology high school work into the university. That's just a notional example of what you could do with that long term.
That's
Yeah.
good. Just
Absolutely.
by closing, because I think I talked too much today. It is a great program that we can offer also to one of the biggest installation in the intelligence arena. And because the soldiers PCS all the time, so the online is one of the best way to continue higher education.
That's correct.
So the PCS is just incredible because you can be PCSing in 6 months or in 1 year or in 3 years, and that will be, that is a good way of doing it. And also for contractors, because the defense contractors also move around so many times, and this industry is just so volatile. But online classes are the best, in this intelligence, and cybersecurity. So I just wanted to close with that comment.
It's good to have an expert on the board. Thank you, Regent, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much,
More to
Regents. I
come,
appreciate it.
obviously. This was
Absolutely.
a discussion item.
Anytime.
And it was successful.
And my card's in there. If you're ever in Sierra Vista, I'd love to see you.
Terrific. Thank you. All right. Our next item, the committee is asked to recommend that the board approve the proposed charters for the restructured A-Board committees. And on this item, Director John Arlo will present. John? And this is an action item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is follow-up to the many discussions we've had around board reorganization and the establishment of a new committee structure. You know, there are 3 committees and their charters that we're asking you to look at and approve. The motion has these going into effect on July 1st. So we will finish out this academic year with the current committee structure and move to the new committee structure on July 1st. That I'm happy to take any questions. And that really covers, I think we're doing them all as one.
The policy and the presentation. Yeah, good, we will do that. Comments, questions from our depleted board? I think we're still holding on to a quorum, but no one leave. Questions, comments? Terrific, making up some time. All right. I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval the proposed new A-Board committee charters. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yes. In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do I need to move the board policy motion as well?
Yes.
Council, yes, okay. I also move that's right, where's the lawyers? I move that the committee forward to the full board for approval to grant the board office authority to revise existing board policies so that they align with the new committee names. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? The item is passed. Okay, our last item is item number 10. Request, and I should just, let's just scheduling update. We're due to break in 5 minutes for lunch. That won't happen. But I think, let's shoot for 12:15. That'll give us 15 minutes and we can resume our meeting on time. Item 10 is a request for new academic organizational unit at the University of Arizona. This item was moved from the consent agenda to our regular agenda. And someone might, there she is. I was going to say someone might fetch our provost of the hour. This is a preliminary review by the committee and not a final action. The board is not scheduled to take final action on this matter until the April 19th board meeting, which gives the University of Arizona Faculty Senate time to further review the matter. And I'd like to just comment on where we are in that consultation process and then ask the provost to respond. The issue of shared governance is interesting. It has a long history. It is embedded in the Arizona Revised Statutes. It is embedded in the faculty constitution. But it is one that is built, while somewhat statutorily, it is really built on trust. It's really built on muscle memory, good habits. And this issue, which I would not have picked as the issue to generate this much energy, but it has. And so I want to touch upon it. Second point, we have many constituencies in our work, the state, the business community, et cetera, but the senior constituency, the students and the faculty, the students are represented on our board. The faculty participation is represented, but in a different way. And so shared governance really falls to the provost and the faculty leadership to find those muscle memories. In this instance, I have taken upon myself to ask the participants sort of what's transpired. I've read the faculty senate minutes. I've really tried to kind of understand the anthropology of this as a prototype of whether or not these kind of habits are as they should be. And I appreciate the provost providing me the information, which I would add, the faculty senate leadership has indicated is accurate, that there has been communication that this particular proposal originally was in the strategic plan of the university. And so it received its first iteration and Senate engagement at that point. And since then has been on the Senate calendar multiple times, but not fully disposed of, the engagement has not yet resulted in a final action on their part. So what I guess I would just like to say, and then ask the provost to respond, is it seems to me that we have an obligation to all of us to help nurture the proper level of shared governance with our faculty. That's just a given, and call upon provosts and presidents to do so. At the same time, our universities need to move with the necessary speed to meet the needs of their mission and their obligations to other constituencies and to keep pace with market demands. And so, Madam Provost and the President, call upon you to continue and engage and enhance the engagement in the time between now and the board meeting on this instance. And from that, hopefully continue to nurture the muscle memory to do so going forward. And to the faculty senate leadership, who I suspect are listening, to respond to those invitations in a timely fashion, so that in response to our mandate to our leadership to lean into the engagement, to respond in a fashion that is efficiently done and effectively done, so that we can move forward with the speed that we need to be effective. Constructive and timely. So I think there's a little bit of sort of a nudge to everybody to do better. And I think we can, and let's use this instance, notwithstanding, I recognize the issue, does this fall into the consultation requirement or not? I think there's some language issues, kind of in a sense beside the point. The point is, let's do this as best we can. And I will here and separately offline urge the faculty leadership to accelerate, to give you the partner that you need in order to move the university at the speed that you need to. So opening comment, but Provost, to you.
Thank you, Regent Deval. Thank you for those well-put words of encouragement. We continue to both believe in shared governance as a profoundly important part of any academic institution, and like you, I hope that we can move expeditiously on all matters of urgent business for the institution. I will say that I am optimistic at this point. Our faculty senate leaders have been good partners in trying to wrangle this process towards a timely resolution by ensuring that all senators provided all the questions that they wanted to have answered by Tuesday, I think this week, a couple of days ago, and the department head, Catherine Brooks of the iSchool, is feverishly working to supply answers to all of those questions. Some of the questions are outside the scope of the current action, but that doesn't mean we won't try to answer them. Absolutely, we will. I will point out that, of course, this is a time of great interest in information science because of the current focus on new technologies in artificial intelligence being released it seems in a daily clip right now, and the press that has gone along with people starting to have access to those tools. So there is a lot of interest in this field. I would like to only make one very practical comment, which is, although this comes forward to the board as a new academic unit, it is not a new academic unit. We are proposing, at the behest of the faculty in the iSchool, that this, what has been an academic department, move to being at the college level of the university effectively, because it is now matured to the point that it would effectively become, it would be a college that is larger than 3 of our existing colleges. It would be the 4th smallest college as it comes out, but the opportunity for it to become a much bigger part of the university's research and educational portfolio is there. It is now a mature entity, and it's growing and flourishing. So I would only put that out as an important piece in this discussion. Many of the questions that our senators have raised suggest that we're inventing an iSchool today. We're not. We have an iSchool. It's already there. It's already doing its business. It is literally moving it around on the org chart that we're countenancing today. And so we will try to make that clear to everybody involved as we roll through the discussion in the next couple of weeks. But like you, I am optimistic that we are going to bring this to conclusion rapidly. President Robbins, did you want to add anything on that?
Well, I think that the chair is aware that this has been discussed, I think, 3 times.
Correct.
At Faculty Senate.
And it's on the agenda for the next meeting.
Before. And it's not something that I was pushing. I was actually pushing for consolidation of colleges, as the provost and many of our faculty members know, in terms of less colleges mean less deans, less administrators, less expenses. So this was not something that came from me. I did, in our strategic plan, suggest that there should be and this is probably more than, I was not going to make a comment, but now open this up.
Now that you're on a roll.
So I, in our strategic plan, and the donors that saw this new college would have been to bring computer science expertise out of the College of Science, MIS out of the College of Business and Management, Eller, to the iSchool out of SBS, and located in this new College of Data Network and Computer and Information Sciences. That did not go well for me. And so I said, okay, because you can imagine that the Eller faculty and SBS faculty and science faculty didn't want to see what happened at many other places like MIT. The biggest opponents to the new MIT program in this area was their, storied economics department, because they thought that there was going to be migration of students out into these areas. There were migration of students out into these areas because, as the provost says, this is a hugely part of our future, and students are going to want these type of degrees. So this is not something that we tried to push down on the fact. This came from the faculty up, and we just shepherded it along, and we thought there'd be no issue. But now it's been discussed 3 times, and it's going to be discussed a 4th time.
Right. As I said, this would not have been the one that I would have anticipated would cause this level of, but here we are. Other comments? Okay, I will make a motion, but want to put this into context. So our choice at this point, we've been asked to postpone this further. To do so in the context of our meeting schedule would essentially mean that the board not act on this at the April meeting and wait until June. And we simply can't allow something like this to drift 9 months from origination. But it places a bigger onus on good faith that we use the time between now and the board meeting to try and create the kind of energy in the consultation that I think we all seek. So with that in mind, I move that the committee recommend that the board approve the University of Arizona's new standalone academic organization unit, formerly known as the University of Arizona's iSchool, to take effect in fall 2023. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. That concludes the agenda of the Academic Affairs Committee, and it's 5 after 12, so we'll have time to eat. And thank you all for your time and participation.
And we will